So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a lower thirds tutorial. So pretty simple. So we're going to go ahead and Command T for that text box, and we'll just put a random name. We'll go with John Doe for this tutorial's sake. And so we're going to go ahead and Command Return out of that text box and go ahead and click down, and it'll just make a second text box. So for the title, we'll just put Person of Interest. Alright, so we don't want them to be the same because we want the second part is describing who John Doe is. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll make it thin italic, and I'll make it just a little bit smaller, you know, standard lower thirds. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll reposition that. So, you know, Command Return out, and then click that V for that pointer tool. I'm going to go ahead and highlight them, drag them over to that general lower third spot, and we're going to go ahead and Command plus to zoom in and hold that shift part and drag that screen so that I can get to that area. I'm going to go ahead and make sure they're aligned all right. And so now we have this, but I want something to kind of pull together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the pen tool, and I'm going to make a nice little shape or straight line. Alrighty, and I'm going to make it just a little bit thicker, so just a few points, just so that it kind of matches. Whoop, kind of deleted it a little bit. Let's try this again. There we go. Much better. So we've got this nice little line here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and Command Return off of that and V to my pointer tool. Just kind of align it all, center it all together. There we go. So now is where we start the actual motion of it. So we're going to go ahead and we'll start from the bottom. So we'll start with Person of Interest. I'm going to go ahead and change color. Whoop, there we go. That's not wanting to change. There we go. We'll just make it purple. So now we have all three layers a different color, easier to distinguish. I'm just going to go ahead and drop down my transform. And we're going to go ahead and right click on the layer, and we're just going to add a new mask. So this mask just makes it easier for us to move the text, and it kind of makes like a curtain to hide behind. So I'm going to kind of stretch this curtain out a little bit just so that I can kind of make it look like this word is appearing out of this line. So I'm going to stretch it, make sure you can see the whole thing. So we want a window, not a door in this case. So go ahead and click Animate now, and we're going to click Position because we're messing with the position of it. So now we'll see that there are two positions. There's a position of our original text. When we move that, it moves the whole box. So we don't have a stationary window. So we move up to where it says Animator, and under that, that's where it says Position. And this is where we're kind of moving things back and forth in and out of that window space. So I'm going to go a few seconds down because this is the end point of what I want this to look like for this portion of the video. So now I'm going to go back a few keyframes, and those little triangles or diamonds, that's a keyframe. So I'm going to move it back, hide it all the way, and it's going to make a second keyframe. And these keyframes are basically the beginning and end points of this motion. So now what I want to do is I want to highlight it, and I want to make it easy ease. So we're going to go keyframe velocity, easy ease. And on your computer, you can just hit FN F9. And this will just like automatically make the easy ease when you've got it highlighted. So it just makes it a little more smooth, a little more interesting than just like one stationary amount. So we can go ahead and we can click on these little chart buttons, and we can just make it so that it zooms a little bit faster on one side than the other. So you can go ahead and you want to click on these little end, and you can just drag it over. And so it'll just make it so that it's going a little bit faster and slows down towards the end. So it makes it more interesting and just gives a little extra pop. So for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut that Person of Interest because we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to John Doe. Alright, so once again, we're going to right click, we're going to make that new mask. And so we want to go ahead and we want to go ahead and stretch out that mask box just like we did with the Person of Interest so that it kind of looks like it's going to come out of that line when we get to that point. Otherwise it's going to look like it's coming out of thin air. So now we're going to animate position, and so once again we have those two positions, and we're going to set our keyframe for the endpoint, and I'm going to have it vary just a little bit. So it's going to come in before Person of Interest. So right now, person of interest is coming in first. So we're just going to go ahead and move it further forward. That way it's like name, title. It's kind of still coming in about the same. So let's move it just a little more. There we go. So it's like name, title. That's a little bit better. Okay. So we're going to make those easy ease. Remember, you can either go right click, keyframe velocity, easy ease, or you can just use your FN. Yeah, so now we've got that. We're going to go ahead and click on our little graph editor once again. And we're going to make it so that it's got that little bit of speed in the front and slows down. Make sure you're careful when you're looking at this. You don't want to mess with something you've already altered. We'll go ahead and just close that. Let's see what we've got. There we go. That looks pretty good. Pace is pretty even for both. Alright, let's go ahead and close that and move on to our shape layer. Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to transform, and we're just going to you notice when we just move the anchor or the scale, like it's moving towards the anchor or it's just kind of going up and down. So there's not really a way to mask it before, so we're going to use the trim path. So we're going to go just a little bit further forward, and for the trim path we're going to click our keyframe on the start. So this is what it ends like, and remember we're going to go work backwards. So we're going to take it to 100% trimmed so that it's not there at all. So it's going to pop up. So same concept as our masking with the words, but just a little bit different. So this is the same thing where we can mess with the pacing of it with that easy ease. So once we've easy eased it, it's a little bit different though because it is a shape. So this one's going to be the orange one, and it's just going one to another. So I'm going to click on that little one and drag it from the bottom. So once again, we've got that fast to a bit slower. So there we go. All kind of flows pretty well together, pretty straightforward. So now that we've got it coming in, we've got to make it so it goes back out. So let's go back down to our person of interest, working our way back. So was the last thing in, it's going to be the first thing out. So we're going to go ahead, and you notice if we mess with the position in where it already was, it's just going to mess around with it. It's not going to do what we want it to, so it's easier for us to just go ahead and make a new animate. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a second position animator. It'll pop up there as animator 2. Oh, not quite popping up. Let's try that again. There we go, it worked that time. Okay, so we must not have clicked it all the way. So we've got that second position animator. So we want to click that keyframe because this is where we want to start. And this time, instead of working backwards, we're working forwards. So we're going to zoom it back out the way it came in, hiding it once again behind that, going back out of the window opening. Once again, using that easy ease. I'm going to go ahead to our little graph. And this time, since it's going out, let's go ahead and do it the opposite leg. So there we go. Still doing that leg. So this time starts out slow, ends fast. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and close that tab and move on to John Doe. So once again, like I said, we're going to add another animator. So position, it's going to show up as animator 2. Stick that keyframe on there. And we're going to pull it back behind the window. So we're out of our window, got our second keyframe. Once again, that easy ease. Alright, let's go ahead and edit it. Once again, we're going to pull it towards the opposite direction so that we have that same effect but going back. Alright, so we're going to kind of make it so person of interest and John Doe goes out again. We're going to move it back just a little bit. there's kind of a little bit of a lag. Alright, let's go ahead back to our shape layer. Once again, we're going to add another trim path, just like before. So it's going to show up trim path 2. So we're going to start it again where it is, move it forward a few frames, and we're going to make it disappear, same way it came in. Once again, that easy ease. Back to our chart. Make it just a little bit steeper there so it's got a little bit more of a swoosh to it. Alright, let's close it and see what we have. So it's one of those things that's pretty simple, and the concept of using masks and positioning and trim paths is something that you can use with a ton of different things in After Effects, and it's just kind of finding what works for you and how you want to utilize it. Personally, I found that the best way to learn After Effects is to work on the small concepts first and build them together.